Hi, my name's Tom O'Brien. I'm a lawyer at Slater and Gordon in their class actions team, and today I'm talking to you about class actions. Before I start today, I just want to start by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we meet, the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nations, and pay my respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging. To start with, and to talk to you about class actions, what I find helpful in a situation like this is to talk about the what, the how, and the why. So I'm going to run through those three topics in my presentation today. So to start with the what is a class action? A class action is a type of legal proceeding that's brought by a group of people to enforce their private civil rights. So just to start at the start there, you can only use it to enforce civil rights. It's not in relation to criminal or anything else. And it requires a group of people. And a helpful way to think about it is to think about it like a bus. If you take the bus to work or to school or wherever you go, each person gets on, there's a whole group of people, and they all ride together. And in a similar way, a class action is a way to facilitate lots of people getting a similar outcome through the legal system. And to use that analogy a bit more, there's lots of benefits to a class action. For example, like a bus, it takes a lot of cars off the road. So instead of each person driving individually their own claim, they can all ride together. That saves money for those people, but it also saves time for the legal system more generally. In terms of thinking about class actions, it can be a bit of an abstract term when I just talk about it like that. So I thought it might be helpful to give some examples of different types of cases that have been brought. There are cases that have related to employment claims, so where someone's been underpaid or they feel that some of their workplace rights have been breached. There have been cases that respond to natural disasters, where people feel that either government or a private company has caused a disaster. There have been cases where there's been product liability. So for instance, a car breaks down and then you find out that it's not just your car, it's one of thousands of different cars that all have the same defect. Those are all different examples of when a class action might be considered. So that's the what. Next, I'm going to talk to you about the how. So how we implement a class action. So before I've spoken about the what, now I'm going to talk to you about the how. There are some procedural steps that are required for a class action to kick off, and they are a must. They have to be complied with in order for a class action to work. The first one is a threshold question as to how many people are involved. So I said before a group, but you need at least 7 people to have a class action. If it's less than 7, it doesn't meet that first step. So you have to have at least 7. There's no upward limit on how many people can be involved. Once you get past 7, you could have 10, 20, 20,000, or 1 million people. The most important thing, though, that is what unites those people. So you need to have at least 7 people, and they all need to have a common claim. What that means is a particular circumstance has arisen in their life, which unites them with the other people in their group, with a common claim against a common entity. So for instance, if a company has released a defective car, each person who bought that car might have a claim against that company, and they all form part of one group. However, if you bought, for instance, I don't know, a Ford, and someone else bought a Ferrari, even if those two cars had similar defects, you wouldn't be part of the same group, not unless there was a common entity that you were suing. So you couldn't have a class action against both Ford and Ferrari unless there was particular features, but I won't go into that detail. So it's important to think about that you have at least 7 people, you have a common person that you're suing, you have common claims against that person, so similar legal issues arise. And then the last question is about common facts and issues. And when you think about a case, ordinarily, there will be large parts of a class action where your claims or your issues are identical, but there might be particular features that are different. So what a class action tries to do is to resolve all of the common issues that are common to each person, so that then when you get to the really, the minor details, you can do so on a basis where most of the issues have been resolved already. So for a class action to proceed, there needs to be common questions, whether those are about a legal issue or about a factual issue. What type of car you bought, when you bought it. Those sort of questions all get resolved by the class action. And then at the very end, the smaller details as to your particular loss that you might have suffered, whether it's $10,000 or more or less, can be resolved individually. So the class action takes away a lot of the legwork, and then it allows you to focus on the things that make your case unique and individual. So that's really the how of a class action. I've told you what it is. I've told you the requirements that are required for it. Last, I'm going to talk to you about the why. So I've spoken to you already about the what and the how of a class action. The last topic is probably the most important for your purposes, and that's the question of why. Why do we have class actions? And if we think about principles of justice, there are really 2 that jump to mind that explain why class actions are so important to our legal system. The first one is about access, allowing people access to justice. The second is about efficiency. And I'll talk to the first one first and then come back to efficiency. So, as I've mentioned already, class actions allow people to band together to bring a common claim against a common entity. As you can imagine, that makes for a lot of savings for those people. It makes for a saving in time because each of them doesn't need to go through the process of dealing with lawyers, the day-to-day operation of litigation, which can be time-consuming and absorb a lot of your time. It can also be a stressful process, and so a lot of people can avoid that stress. The way that they do that is that they nominate one person to be the lead plaintiff in a case. That person assumes the responsibility to act for everyone else, and it's through their case that everyone else has the common questions that they have in common with other people in the group resolved. So that's the first benefit in terms of access. The second benefit is cost. Litigation in Australia is expensive. There's just no way of avoiding that. What a class action does is it provides a means by which people can have their issues resolved and share the load together. So if you're one of 10,000 people who are affected by a particular situation, rather than each of you having to pay out of pocket significant amounts of money, you all chip in together and you all contribute the cost for that litigation. So it makes it much more affordable for people, and it means that when they actually do get a good result, and fingers crossed that happens more and more, those people have more in their pocket at the end. So they get a better result, they get more money, they walk away happy. That's the best outcome. The other thing as well to think about is situations where it might not be viable for an individual to bring a claim. For example, recently there's been a lot of litigation and a lot of class actions coming out of the Banking Royal Commission that took place a few years ago. One of the issues that came out in the Royal Commission was about banks charging fees but not providing any services for those fees. Some of those related to situations where you might have paid a fee of $5. And $5 is obviously an amount of money that you would not normally commence litigation to try and get back. It would be laughable. Another situation might be you were charged $50 or you charged $5 over 10 years. In that situation, you have small amounts of money that are, individually, there's no way for you to really challenge the decision to get charged those fees. However, when you band together in a class action, because there are so many of you, it becomes economical to run a class action. And so in situations like that, individuals can have small grievances resolved, even though in the normal way, the legal system would not be designed to help resolve those issues. So there's access issues and access solutions, both in terms of individuals getting to go to court, individuals being able to do it in a way that saves money, and in a way that really ensures that everyday people can get a good outcome. And that's really what a lot of class action practitioners are focused on, is trying to get a good outcome for the people who've been affected. The second thing to talk about in terms of the why is efficiency. And it can be easy to skip over that one when you think about access to justice, because access is such a huge issue in Australia. There's so many people who can't have access to the courts, often because of money or because of time or other issues. But it's important to also think about efficiency, because we have a legal system that is designed to use the public benefit of courts in an efficient way. There's a huge demand on judges around the country and lots of litigation, and that trend is only increasing. And the benefit to class actions is it means that rather than having 20 or 100 or 1,000 people all bringing their own cases, they're all bundled together. And that makes it more efficient for judges to resolve issues and ensure that justice is done in a quick and timely manner. So really, I've spoken there about efficiency and access to justice. Now, the last thing just to mention briefly is that there are times when a class action might not be appropriate. That often happens where you have a group of people who fall under the threshold. It might be at first instance that you think that you have 7 people who have a common claim, but it turns out that 1 or 2 of them have a claim against a different person, so that suddenly you have 6 or 5. Another situation might be where you don't have common issues together. It might be that, using the car analogy I've spoken about earlier, one person's brakes are defective, another person's steering wheel is defective. The two things are separate, and it might be that they can be resolved together, but it also might be that they're too different and they can't be resolved together. So there are situations where a class action is not appropriate, and that's often where the people who are bringing the case don't have enough in common. So a key question is about what is it that you have in common with other people in the class action? And really, that boils down to the comments I've made earlier about efficiency. The idea is that a class action should be designed to bring common issues together to be resolved in an efficient way. If they're not common, then they can't be resolved in an efficient way, and the ordinary processes of litigation need to be followed instead. That is, that each person brings a case individually if they want to. Class actions are a really important part of the Australian legal landscape. Trends to date suggest that they are being used more and more to resolve issues that affect different Australians in different ways. I hope this presentation today has given you some context to some of the key questions about what forms the scenario where a class action is appropriate. I hope that out of this, you're able to better understand what it is, how it operates, and why it's important. Thank you for your time.